What's up, you amazing human beings, gym owners, high ticket group, individuals, that fitness pros that are just chilling, hanging out here. I'm super excited to bring to you not only a close friend of mine, but also a client of ours, Michael Ranfone. Michael, thank you so much for being on this call right now.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you having me here.
Awesome, dude. I'm excited. We'll dive into a whole bunch of stuff, but just a little background on Michael real quick that I will give, and then we'll dive deeper into all this stuff. But Michael's the owner of Ranfone Training Systems. He thought it would be a good idea to put his own last name on his gym. He's one of those guys. Just kidding, but it's phenomenal.
I was young. I needed the money.
I love it. No, but he runs an exceptional training facility outside of New Haven, Connecticut, in Hamden, Connecticut. And just to give context, before we start diving into this, a little bit of I think it's very important to edify you a little bit before we dive into some of the particulars. For those of you that are wondering, Michael was the youngest at the time, back when he was 25. He was the youngest Division I strength and conditioning coach in D1, period, in college sports at 25 years old, at Yale. So obviously not a small, tiny school, a very prestigious school. And ended up leaving that, started his gym in LLC was back in 2005, but actually got a location in 2007. So for the last 14 years, he's operated Ranfone Training Systems out of a brick and mortar facility. For the last 3 years, including this year, he's averaged $1 million every single year. And so he runs an exceptional training facility. He's been with us for going on 3.5, 4 years.
Right around there. Yeah.
Yeah. And been with us for a while. Exceptional human being, extremely smart. We'll get into all the certifications you have and all that good stuff and tell your story. But I think it's important, just if you're watching this, if you know Michael or heard of Michael, he's also, if you're familiar with, he does a lot of stuff also in sports organizations right now. I know you've worked with the Braves. What are some other baseball organizations you've worked with?
The Twins, the Mets. Let me think here. I mean, there's been a few professional teams, but the most exposure I've had was definitely with the Braves.
Yeah.
To continuing ed and consulting services.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else was a little bit more transient because I was doing education at that point where we had NHL teams, MLB teams, NBA teams, NFL teams. So
Awesome.
There was quite a mixture, and that's almost like a whole lifetime ago. Ever since I got going with you guys, so.
That's cool. We'll dive into it. But for those of you that are watching this real quick, do me a favor, drop a comment down below. Let us know that you're watching this. Again, super excited about this. All right, Michael, let's dive into this, dude. What got you into, I always like to find out from people as they get into gyms and everything, what got you into fitness? Like, let's walk back. Let's take a step back. When did you get into it? When was kind of that first interest, and what was the driving force behind it?
Well, I think a lot of people in strength and conditioning were former athletes. You know, because it was such a close part of the game, and even more so now. And now 20 some odd years ago, it wasn't as integral of a part, but there was always some value placed on off-season conditioning, hitting the weight room, especially as a football player. But it really wasn't until I was injured that I kind of, cut my teeth of like rebuilding myself through physical therapy, more physical medicine, and then ultimately strength and conditioning that I would say it was the only reason why I was able to return to the field of competition and then somewhat propel me into this field.
It sounds like, obviously, I mean, to bring up an injury as the thing that would project you into that field, it was probably a pretty traumatic experience. Like, what exactly happened?
Yeah, so I was 18. I was during my senior year of sports, and the fourth game of the season, October 4th, 1997. If you want to do the math, I'm old, but it was a very intense football game. I received an injury, or I got an injury that was misdiagnosed on the sideline. They asked me if I can tolerate the pain, I could go back. And that was in the first quarter. So I played the next 3 quarters on a pretty severely damaged leg that almost cost me my leg in the next couple days.
Okay, so hold up. So let's think about it. So you almost lost your leg. You're 18 years old.
Yeah.
Close to, like, essentially prime of your life as a male athlete.
Oh, no, I peaked early.
I love it. But, like, let's stop for a second. You almost had your leg amputated because of misdiagnosed injury.
Yep.
What was the actual injury?
So it's called compartment syndrome. Mm-hmm. There are 2 types. There's chronic and acute compartment syndrome, and it could really only be diagnosed effectively through measures that weren't available on the sideline of a high school football game.
Yep.
It was diagnosed as a torn calf, and And so what they did was they taped it, which is the worst thing you can do, apply compression to basically like a blood flow issue where there is blood being trapped in a compartment of your fascia. So what happens is that it wants to expand to release pressure, but when you add compression to it, it's got nowhere to go. So it literally crushes your arteries, your veins, your nerves, your like everything gets demolished.
Wow. So it wreaked havoc on your lower leg. And that was your left leg or right leg?
It was my left leg.
Okay. All right. And so walk me through, you play the rest of the game, which is insane. How much pain were you in?
It was bad.
I bet it was.
It was an important football game, you know, like.
Well, did you guys win?
We won by 2 points.
All right. There we go. All right. So walk me through what happened next. Do you go to the doctor? Like, how did you guys figure out that?
Nope, I didn't go to they asked me at the end of the game if I wanted to go. And I said, you told me it was torn. I'm going to go home. So that night I was in excruciating pain. I started to lose feeling and function of my foot, of my left foot, because of all the damage. Like it didn't stop, bleeding and applying pressure. I didn't want to wake my parents up, but at about 5 a.m. I woke my dad up and I said, I got to go to the doctor. So he brought me to the doctors. They confirmed that it was a torn calf. They sent me for x-rays, which wouldn't have shown anything, which it didn't. And they sent me home with some painkillers. So I went back again like 3 hours later, because now I'm like crawling out of my skin in pain. I can't use my foot. I can't feel my, like pretty, extreme conditions. I went back, the doctor said, there's nothing we can do for you. You just got to wait it out. So I went back home again. So this is almost 30 hours after the initial injury. And I went back to the doctors one more time, and there was another doctor, and he said, you have to go to the emergency room right now. So they brought me in, and the pressure test to see if it's compartment syndrome, because that's what it was finally diagnosed as, is basically they stick a needle in your leg and it tells you how much pressure is in a particular compartment. So in this part of my leg, the normal pressure is anywhere between 25 and 35. They do surgery at 40 PSI. Mine was 137. So,
oh my gosh.
So by the time I actually got into surgery, when they opened up my leg, there was already necrotic tissue. Mm-hmm. So now they're thinking we have to, depending on the severity of the tissue damage, we have to amputate. So they cut out like a portion of my leg because it was clearly dead. And they had to open up my other side. So basically there was so much swelling that it ripped both sides of my legs open. And for 8 days, my leg was wide open on a bed because they couldn't suture it shut because there was so much swelling. So,
wow.
Yeah. And then for 8 days, they weren't quite sure what was going to happen, how it was going to respond, if there was still an amputation or further removal of tissue. So on the 8th day, they were able to go in without any more or excessive removal, as well as not having to graft it shut. So they were able to suture it, and they told me that I might not be able to walk right again. Playing was probably an impossible thing. All this stuff, just to kind of like, safeguard their behinds. So. Wow.
Okay. And then you ended up actually playing the last 2 games of the season, didn't you?
I did, against doctor's advice, but they really couldn't do anything to stop me. Yeah. So I had this huge contraption on my leg to protect it. I mean, it was like Stay Puft Marshmallow foot. But I played only defense in the last 2 games. And I think we lost in the championship pretty badly, but it wasn't because I was, they were just better than us. But
interesting. Okay. Yeah. So how long was the full recovery process? And then
2 years.
This was the thing that kind of got you into strength and conditioning, right?
Yeah.
Understanding how the body works, understanding how you can improve, how you can heal, how you can do all this stuff. And that was kind of the catalyst for you.
Yeah. I mean, I was a pretty highly recruited guy out of high school. I was definitely an overachiever. I was someone that could play 1AA football when that was a thing, without really being a liability on the field. But having a one-legged safety on your roster probably isn't a high priority for people. So I received all my scholarship offers, all my offers pretty much went away. And I actually dropped out of high school for a couple of weeks thinking I was going to repeat my senior year or reclass post-grad. But then someone found me on my buddy's highlight film and inquired with my coach, and they just offered me. It wasn't to what I thought I was going to do, but it turned out to be the right fit for me.
That's awesome. All right. So let's fast forward a little bit. You're playing in college, right?
Yep.
So you're doing this. What are you studying in college?
Economics and psychology.
What a great combo.
Yeah.
What an awesome combo.
And it's only because I had no idea. Like, I didn't know what I wanted to do.
That's amazing. So when did you start studying like strength and conditioning and all of this stuff?
It was really something that when I got to college, I had a red shirt because I wasn't medically cleared yet. And my coach looked at me and was basically like, you got to get bigger and stronger. So I went down to the local magazine store and picked up powerlifting magazines, bodybuilding magazines. And I just went to town on it and consumed every piece of information that I could, because the school didn't offer an exercise phys or exercise science program.
Yeah.
And I honestly thought I was going to go on into the medical space anyways. So like after the injury, like I totally lost my identity. Like I didn't like classic injury. Like I identified so hard with being this all-American football overachiever guy that I was really trying to figure out my bearings. And honestly, the only way that I could have some sense of myself was through the weight room. So that was something that I just took a lot of pride in, and I was going to outwork, and the classic story of I'm just going to overcome. And I think that is at the very definition of strength. That's what strength is being able to overcome obstacles. So
100%. Okay. So let's fast forward real quick. What's the transition from you being in college? When did you graduate real quick? How old were you?
23.
23. So in 2 years, you are now the strength and conditioning coach for Yale. Like how does that even happen?
Yeah. So I honestly, even though I was doing economics, I love psychology. I really didn't know what to do with it. And this was like around the scandal of like Enron and the financial stuff. So all the offers that were coming in were to go to that space. And I honestly just could not see myself operating in an office, crunching numbers my whole life. And I figured if I just, tried this thing that I was really passionate about, that I could always go back if it didn't work out. I wasn't going to lose my degrees. I wasn't going to lose my majors, stuff like that. So I applied to a couple internships, and just so happened Yale had an internship open. And like you said, I live right down the street from Yale. I grew up right around Yale. It's where I wanted to go coming out of high school. So I got that position, and that was kind of like the thing that catapulted me into the professional realm.
And so 2 years later, you go from intern to the head strength and conditioning coach. So how was that when you became the S&C? For many gym owners or strength and conditioning coaches, that's the top. Like
the panacea.
Yeah, that's it. Like that's where you want to be a D1 strength and conditioning coach. Like I remember when I was doing that, that's what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
Like, I was like in high school and like college a little bit when I was like getting into it. Like I was like, man, that would be a dream job. Like this would be a blast.
Yeah.
Tell me about that. Like it obviously something changed because you're still not doing that. And that's like one of those where if you're doing it, you're going to probably keep doing it for a long time. So what happened?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the classic example of you don't know what you don't know. So I got to Yale as an intern, loved it. I had a great head coach that I was learning under. 2 years later, he got the assistant job with the Tennessee Titans. So he left, the associate left. And then all of a sudden, and this happened real quick. So I'm like the last man standing in the staff. And it was at the time where most jobs were already filled. So they asked me if I was fine with taking over. And, they kind of gave me the position to run. And it became such an unworthy grind that I didn't really like. Because don't forget, 20 something years ago, strength and conditioning was still in its infancy, especially in the college setting, especially at the Ivy League level. So I had every head coach was my boss. I had the athletic directors telling me and none of them knew my job.
Yeah.
Right. And I really became, and trust me, I wasn't very diplomatic back then. And I really didn't handle myself in the most professional way. And I really had more confrontation for the sake of confrontation rather than resolution. Yeah. So it was coming to the point where I was probably going to burn this bridge. And I said in March of my last year, I was like, I'm going to step away at the end of this year to pursue other things. And I think everyone had a big sigh of relief. Not that I wasn't competent in doing what my job was. It just wasn't a good fit because I still wanted to learn. I still wanted to develop. I understood the importance of mentoring, and I didn't have that.
Hmm.
And, again, I was a little bit raw for that position at that point in my life. And there wasn't much of a support system there to see me through or give me more options to handle the things that I needed to do.
What was the name of the head coach that you interned under?
Jason Novak.
Yep.
He's now the head strength coach at Michigan State.
Yep. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So
great dude.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. And you have a lot of people in the strength and conditioning world, like a lot of people. You have a very large, close network with some of the top people in the S&C world, which is really cool. So let's talk about kind of what your next steps were. You leave Yale, and then what did you do?
The biggest thing I wanted to do when I left Yale was to go back to school. I definitely wanted to try to pursue either a high-level private sector job or get back into college or maybe the NFL. But I also wanted to make myself a little bit more distinguishable between your normal, S&C coach. So I went back to school for my manual therapy license. So that was a 9-month program that started 2 months after I left Yale. So I jumped back into school. I think it was 36 hours a week for 9 or 10 months. And on top of that, I started a consulting business because I'm from the area. I had a lot of people ask me if I could work with their teams or their kids, and it was a recruiting violation. Yep. So I couldn't do it. So when I left Yale, I already had a surplus of clients. Yep. So I loaded up my truck. I had kettlebells, dumbbells, sandbag, everything you needed. And I became like a traveling band, and I would go to high school, to college. The other thing about New Haven is there's 15 universities in New Haven.
No one knows.
And none of them have, at that point, a full-time strength and conditioning coach. So I was able to basically be a consultant and or part-time employee for each of those teams, and then the high school. So I was working probably 100 hours a week on top of going to school.
Wow. And how long did you do that for?
Well, I went to school for that 1 year, and then so that was 05, 06 until 07, where I actually set up shop somewhere. I mean, I remember this, my gas bill for my car was $700 a month.
Oh my gosh.
And now when you factor in wasted time or dead time, I was like, I'm losing probably $2,000 a month. Mm-hmm. So I rolled that into subleasing from a baseball training facility in 07.
That's
because
awesome.
It was also in my wheelhouse. They're already used to paying one-on-one rates, individualized service. Mm-hmm. They have a high incidence of injury. They're really unfit. So my features, or the features of the business, were very complementary for a business like that, because what differentiates a batting cage? Yeah, not much. But now you have a strength and conditioning coach that worked at Yale down, you know what I mean? So it was very complimentary for them as well.
What was the name of that place? Because I used to live in Connecticut. I played travel ball there.
So it was OKeefe's baseball academy. So Mike OKeefe is like a local legend around here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. He was really good. I think he made it up to the majors a couple times, but injuries got him at the end of it. But he was a fantastic athlete. But baseball was his show.
That's cool. Okay, so you're doing that. How old are you at this point? 2007 when you opened.
I was 27.
Okay, so this is all like a short period of time. Let's be real. You went through a lot. You went through a lot of different things in a very short amount of time. So you have this at this point. How many certifications do you have?
Certifications really didn't become in there's 3 certifications back then. You know what I mean? But I had all of them. It wasn't really until the late 2000, say 2009, was that certification boom where you had, FMS, FRC, PRI, Olympic lifting certs, all that stuff. So I did all of everything. I try to consume everything.
That's awesome. Okay. Do you have a family at this point? Are you married? Do you have
Oh no, I was not fit for domesticated life, man. I was my own thing. I had one responsibility and I didn't even do that well. So,
okay.
So I still trained. I still looked the part, which probably was another reason why I had a lot of young kids wanting to train with me. Yeah. Because at that point I was like Big Brother Mike, and now I'm at best like Uncle Mike to most of the kids in my place. But yeah, I wasn't living the healthy lifestyle. Let me tell you that.
Okay. We can dive into that in just a second. I want to talk a little bit about you open up shop 2007. What's your revenue look like in those first couple of years? Because you're subleasing. When did you move into your own dedicated spot?
2010. which is the unit. So I'm in this huge industrial complex.
Yep.
The baseball facility was probably about, I don't know, 8,000 square feet. But you know about baseball facilities in the Northeast, they only use it half the year at best.
Yep.
So I basically was paying, I think, $500 a month for half the year. I had the whole facility to myself, and I had a dedicated space with like 5 racks, weights, and all that stuff. So I was never strapped for a place to go or space. And my busiest times in the summer were their deadest times. So I had teams coming in, like I had groups of 25 to 40 kids, hockey teams, football teams. And I started to have this like like the 3 big towns around us, I had a shop basically in each place. And the best part is I didn't have to pay rent on the other places. So I would do high school facilities for nothing. It was all margin.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
And what were you doing revenue wise for those 3 years prior to moving into your own spot?
If I had, because it was seasonal and I kind of liked that because I only had to worry about myself and there was really nothing else. Mm-hmm. I wasn't really doing adult fitness at that time. Like I had a couple one-on-one clients, but my moneymaker was hockey, football, and baseball.
Yeah, 100%.
So I would do like 50K in a quarter and like 15K the next, because I didn't care. I would go away. I would take certs, whatever.
Yep.
So probably between 2006 to 2010, I was probably in the 130 to 160 range. Mm-hmm. You can't ask the IRS because it was all cash, but
cash, baby. Can't prove it.
And I didn't do it too, like I didn't charge sales tax. I didn't do anything.
Yeah, it wasn't really. It was more so just it was more what you love to do, and you knew that's like what you want, not so much a business. So when did it become a business for you?
I would say it took me a while, so when I opened up my own location in 2010, right next door, I made my first hire before I opened it up. And it was a friend that I've known at that point for like 5 years.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, because he was up in Canada at the time, finishing up his undergrad. He went back to school. I said, listen, dude, I'm thinking about opening up my shop. But if you're not going to come along, I'm not going to do it because I know I'm going to need someone. And it's cool. I'm not putting pressure on you because if I don't do this, I'm going to go back to school for chiropractic or physical therapy. So whatever you want to do. He's like, no, I'm done in May. I'll be down in June. And then he was my first hire and he's still with me. He's now lives in Colorado as my virtual GM and basically my back end guy for all the online stuff we do.
That's awesome. That's amazing. Okay. So that's when it kind of became a business for you, or was it?
I think you could label it a business. I wouldn't consider I owned a business. I owned a job for a long time. I owned a job that no one fucking wanted and I couldn't get rid of. Yep. And instead of like being and owning up to having an actual business, I found other jobs to do to pay for my business, which came to the whole boiling point of why I needed Gym Launch and why Gym Launch was so helpful for me to ascend to like, I think at this point, I'm at least a legitimate business operator and owner, where before I happened to have a business that I was the breadwinner for.
Yeah. Cause if you left at any point up until what would you say? 2017, 2018, if you left your business, would it be money?
That recent, definitely. Yeah. So I would say if I left any time before 2018, it wouldn't be a thing now.
Yeah.
And that's not to say that it was like, I just didn't do right by the business to develop. You know what I mean? Like I didn't put the same care and stock into my staff and the infrastructure. I didn't build a business, like quite honestly.
So where was your time focused? So I think it's really important to hit on this piece, like where did you put your time and what were you more focused on at that point?
If you looked at my Instagram from like 4 years ago, you'd know I was living like this very entrepreneurial type of lifestyle where I was doing education, I was doing consulting with teams and small businesses, and I was traveling around the world. Like I was in South Korea, I was in Germany, I was in Canada, I was all around the world, not tending to my business. But the money was so good, it buffered out the shittiness of how I ran my business.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like
100%.
I was like, well, I can make $7,000 on a weekend. I fly to San Jose, I fly to, and come back. So I don't really have to pay myself, but I can just like give money to someone else to do what I should. Like I just paid someone to backfill the job I wasn't doing at the point,
Was it at that point, what was keeping you from just shutting down your gym and just traveling and doing that full time?
Oh God, I think part of it is just the, like I did want to be a business owner. I just didn't know how to.
Yeah.
So probably the coping mechanism that I defaulted to was like, well, I can go make money to keep this thing alive and then figure it out at some point, you know? And I think if I closed it down, I would have, the idea of failure was very shocking to me, but also the responsibility that I made to the clients, to my staff. And I don't think I could have like articulated what that would have actually been like to me. So I just denied it.
Yeah. Do you think there was a piece of ego wrapped in there, being a business owner, saying that I owned a business and I'm an entrepreneur and all that stuff too?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, it's like being really busy and not being productive.
Yeah.
And I don't perceive myself as ego driven, but it definitely comes back to ego of not saying like I could have done this better or I could do it better without this thing in my life.
Yeah.
You know?
Okay.
But also just wrapping my head around that massive, like, because at that point it was still open for 10 years. So there might have been also some really good things I was doing. It just wasn't maximal or optimal.
Yeah, absolutely. So what were some struggles on because I know you've gone through some stuff personally as well. Like you've gone through a lot of things. Like during this time what was going on for you personally? Because like, it sounds like you were super busy.
Yeah.
You mentioned coping mechanisms multiple times. Was there other stuff in your life at this time that you were dealing with or maybe not facing or addressing?
Yeah, I think there's always a component to like high success. Like I used to use this term in lectures that the cost of high performance is health.
Yeah.
And you can look at health, like take the highest level athlete, like they're usually still good, their body can't do it. So they lose physical health, orthopedic health. You look at like entrepreneurial pursuits, and most people have terrible health habits, and then their mental health catches up to them. So I think there was a combination of multiple things. Like I had a lot of injuries that I was dealing with. My body was kind of beat up. I just had a young kid. I got married. My father-in-law got cancer. Like there was a bunch of stuff. So whether it be conscious or me be cognizant of it or not, like probably the best thing or easiest thing I could have done was just to stay busy and not address anything.
Yeah.
And I was always like, there's not a thing that I can't overcome. Like, so chip on my shoulder, I will figure it out. I'll put my head down, war of attrition. Like that's always been my mindset. But then like when you get to a level of maturity where you just say, well, what's the cost of this?
Yeah.
And the cost to me, I remember this, like it was yesterday. I was at a zoning meeting on a Thursday night to justify the parking lot of my second location that I was about to open. And I got out of there at 10 o'clock. I went home, got up at 2:30, drove to the airport, flew to San Jose, did a 3-day seminar, took a red eye home, drove right back to my house, made breakfast, made lunch, took my kid to school and went to work. Wow. And that was my life for like 9 weeks. And this was the end of 2018, in the beginning of 2019. I got rid of consulting. I got rid of education. I got rid of everything that didn't revolve 3 components of my life: husband, father, business owner. And the hub of that was my own personal well-being. So that's really when I started to invest in myself and treat myself like an asset.
Yeah. Well, what was the turning point for you? Because like, what made you realize that you needed to focus on those 3 aspects?
Well, I mean, because it wasn't a new thing that I said here. If someone asked me at any point in the last 7 years, since my son was born, they would have, what's the most important thing? Family. I'm a husband, I'm a father, and I'm a business owner. But I was living in such incongruence to the things that I said mattered most to me, because you pay with your attention, you pay with your time. So every freaking weekend, out of like 10 out of the last 13 weekends, I'm not even home on the weekend, and I work 60 hours a week. Like that's not being a father, that's not being a husband, and I'm not being a good business owner. So the skill of saying no to things became very relevant at that point in my life. 100%. And those were all awesome things. Like I loved teaching, I loved consulting, I loved doing all those things. But do I love it more than making sure my son has a father figure? Like that kind of stuff that really burns deep and like keeps you up at night.
100%. We were talking about it on Wednesday, actually, during the podcast that we were recording. You're defined by your no's more than your yeses, especially when it comes to being 100%. And I think that's so important. So important that more people need to understand. And what I'm getting from all of this, by the way, is as we move into kind of more of your focus, the last 3 years sounds like they've been hyper focused on those three very important things. And you've seen the most growth in those areas and you've been able to do all those things. And I see I guess 2018, early 2019 was you went from split attention and trying to do everything to hyper focus on these specific things, saying no to great opportunities, potential opportunities, and current opportunities, and saying yes to the things that you truly care about the most. And now you're reaping the rewards of those.
Without a doubt.
Right. Awesome.
Without a doubt.
Has that helped your relationships, not only with your family, but also your coaches, with your clients, and with the people in the community?
Yeah, 100%. So, I mean, first of all, putting back into the business to get an unbelievable amount of return, both in quality of life, health, and finances, set us up. Like when we hit the pandemic, we didn't fucking flinch. The staff didn't flinch. My family didn't flinch. And this is with my wife losing her job because of COVID. And I didn't break a sweat. It was just this is what we're going to do. These are the levers we're going to pull. This is the play. And I remember standing in front of my staff right when the pandemic hit. I'm like, listen, guys, it's going to be tough. I'm not going to mince words here. However, I'm going to protect as much as I can about this, but you have to be all in. And I have no, if you want to go and collect unemployment, I admire your honesty, because if you don't want the challenge, then I can't want you here.
Yeah.
And everyone was like, we're it. And awesome. we freaking flirt. And it was the best, oddly enough. Funny how it works. In the face of adversity is also your best time of growth, right? 100%. So, and I have a young staff, they're all in their 20s.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So this is probably the first time many people saw adversity at this scale.
Oh yeah.
These guys whose first job out of college is my place, which was pretty easy up until this point, because they all came in on the growth curve. It's cool.
Oh yeah.
Being busy, seeing people all this stuff, and then all of a sudden screeching halt. But they all developed so much in that time because they pushed themselves, which is just a lesson that I think we all have to embrace at some point.
Absolutely. Okay. So I want to talk business real quick. So let's hit on the business stuff. So 2018, what are you doing? When did you join Gym Launch in 2018? Right?
Yeah, right around there. I can't remember. I think my first 6-week challenge was February of 18.
Okay. So February of 18. What were you doing in revenue per month before you joined?
Probably anywhere between 35 and 42.
Okay.
And that's also because we didn't have adult fitness built in.
Okay. So it was all athletes at that point.
Mainly athletes and one-on-one, but we didn't have a group model. Mm-hmm. We had an exclusive semi-private model because remember, sports performance was my breadwinner for the first 7 years.
100%.
I poo-pooed the idea of doing adult fitness. And one of the things that got me out of that was me catching myself bad-mouthing a local place. I remember this was in a staff meeting. I was like, those people suck. They don't know how to do shit. And I said, you know what? If I'm going to say that, I'm going to prove it wrong. I'm going to prove myself right. And I'm going to come up with an adult fitness model that's better.
I love it. That's awesome.
And that's just my own bullshit. Maybe that was jealousy that they were killing it, whatever. But I'm not one to say something and not mean it and not taste it to see if it's right or wrong.
Dude, I love it. That's awesome. So you introduce that, you start crushing it, you're growing. You hit your first $1 million run rate month in 2019, right? January 2019. Right. So you doubled your gym in roughly a year.
Yep.
That's phenomenal.
Without any compromise to, I think, the athlete piece.
Yep.
Or, really the inner workings of what makes us unique.
Which is massive, which is huge.
Yeah.
Reliable, steady growth, period. Which is, I think, what every business owner loves. Yes, rocket growth is great. Doing a hockey stick is phenomenal when it comes to growth, but it's also, there comes a lot of challenges with that. There's a lot of bottlenecks that show up. There's a lot of
careful what you wish for is typically the response.
100%. Okay. So 2019, you have your first $1 million run rate month. In 2019, you're averaging $1 million across. You hit that and you stuck. A lot of gyms get to that point where they have a really good month and then they drop back down. You pretty much have averaged that across the board. Yeah, there's some undulation, but I know we have been talking and friends for the last easily 2 years, 2.5 years.
Yeah.
And I know that it's been super consistent. So what have been some of the key things that have helped you be able to build that gym, your gym, into average $1 million gym for the last 3 years, even through a pandemic. What are some key things that have helped you do that?
I would put a lot of the emphasis on labor, in all honesty. At some point you're going to have to backfill yourself. You're going to have to remove yourself from day-to-day stuff. And I'd like to believe that I had a pretty good presence in my gym when I was on the floor 40, 50 hours a week. Yep. People would notice if I'm not there, if I replace myself with, substandard labor. So I firmly believe that you can hire on character, train for skill. That's something that I really, when I said that, I started to do that in 2018 or 2019 and really put a lot of emphasis on staff development, curriculums, protocols, systems, things like that, and structuring the business so it has repeatability. So like when we talk about hockey stick growth, well, how do you maintain that? Well, what's the infrastructure to support it? And for me, the emphasis was always placed on labor. And I kind of run my business like a sports team. So if you looked at my staff, they're all different. They all have different personalities, different skills. It's very eclectic. But that's also like the variability is very complementary. And we probably have someone for everyone. You know what I mean? In terms of mindset, how they want to be coached, specialties, things of that nature. So having them grow in their own pattern, which is running parallel, but not like you're not going to get the same thing out of everyone.
I love that. And this is interesting. And I think this is fascinating and testament to you as a leader and the kind of culture that you built. We were talking on Tuesday and you mentioned that in passing, and I thought this was incredible. You have never fired someone.
Correct.
Never fired someone. That's huge. That's massive. Like,
certainly helped.
Yeah, that's incredible. Which means that, so the way that I see that is that you've built an onboarding process for new team members. Number one, it's the hiring process. You've been able to identify people and honed in your hiring process, and you're a good judge of character right away. And you're asking the right questions. You're going through the process. And then on top of that, your onboarding experience is obviously set up for success. And it's set up to also probably weed out people who can't make it on the back end. Right.
Yeah. Well, I like when you look at anything from special forces to, an NFL draft or anything where it really comes down to the selection process, we have a very, very systematic selection process that gives us a lot of time. So there's a lot of upside and very little downside, because essentially we get free labor for 3 months, vet and make sure that they're a right fit and that they're capable of doing the things that we want them to do. And then we can ascend them just like, anyone else that is learning a skill. So we can create the rate of change and the size of change in that 3 months and beyond.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Let's grab some current stats real quick. I know we got to wrap this up pretty soon. So it is June. We're at the end of June, early July of 2021. How many members do you have right now?
202 brick and mortar.
Okay. 202. How many online?
77, I believe.
Okay. And what's your total revenue?
This month it should top out around 100. 100.
Cool. And that's kind of where you sit right now, I think, is about 100. Yeah. Right. I
mean, so again, like having the athletes coming back provide a nice, bolus of front end cash. 100%. They're all short-term packages because they're only home until they go back to college in the fall. So, I think we had 37 kids come back. So that's like a $47,000 bump, it helps.
Oh yeah, for sure. And how many staff members do you have?
9.
That's a big team, man.
Yeah.
That's a big team. And how many hours a week do you spend in your business? Actually in your business?
Like physical location?
Yeah. Like actually, not just you actually being in the location, but actually doing work.
So working on the business?
Yeah.
I mean, anywhere between 40 and 50 still.
Nice. So it's it's like a regular business in a sense.
Totally. There. And I could probably call that out a little bit. But I do like to go in and make sure that I'm still physically, I don't really need to be there anymore.
Yeah.
I only have 2 clients that I see in person. The staff pretty much does everything they need to do. I could probably work 10 hours and the business actually maybe do better, but maybe my ego can't handle that hit. But I have a good amount of online clients right now, which came by way of, the whole pandemic thing. but I could probably work 20 hours a week in my business and not see any
change.
Yeah.
Which is interesting. That's such a difference from 4 years ago, 5 years ago, right? 3 years ago, 3.5 years ago, when you were traveling all the time, never there or there sometimes and like gone. And now you're actively choosing with intention to be in your facility, to be seen, to be around your team, to be with your family, to do all that stuff. That's pretty amazing, man.
Well, I mean, a lot of it's based on what I was exposed to via Gym Launch. I mean, quite honestly, like one of the biggest like points of emphasis that I have to make is that first meetup that we had in like June of 2018 or whatever my first year was.
Yeah.
There's something about walking in a room and having the environment like kind of put you in your place and being like, these guys are all crushing it.
Yeah.
And not like, you have to elevate. Like, I think that was one of the most compelling features of Gym Launch, is that the type of person that is in there are all experts in execution, are all trying to be really good at what their craft is. And having mentors that have been able to produce overwhelming success stories time and time again. There's something humbling about that. And it drives you, like you either rise or get the fuck out. And like, I wanted to rise.
We see that, man. I love it. There's that accountability that comes with the community.
Yeah, without doubt.
It's the same at a micro level within gyms, and it moves up into a macro level in situations like with Gym Launch and Legacy and everything else.
Well, like the first time, like you graduate the big fish in the pond senior year in high school, and then you walk into a college locker room and you're the smallest, shortest, slowest dude, and you're like,
"Yep,
I'm gonna do what it takes to stay. I should just leave and drink." Like,
yeah, you got two choices. You're either gonna fight, or you're gonna flight. There's flight. Either one. You're just gonna run and just go do something else. Put your head in the sand and do that, or you're just gonna sit there and you're gonna fight. I remember, dude, I was a walk-on, man. I didn't get a scholarship. I had to fight. When you say the smallest guy, I was always the smallest guy though, so it didn't really matter. Didn't really matter. I always looked like a little kid playing.
Yeah.
So, I love it though, man. That's awesome. All right, cool. I always ask two questions real quick that I always like to finish interviews with. Number one is looking back at 2007, you got your location, right? 2007 is what you got. Yep. The first lease. 4,300 square feet. Never forget it. So 2007, what is some piece of advice that you would give Michael Ranfone back then? What's the one piece of advice you would give him?
The number one thing is manage your attention and probably be a little bit more financially or fiscally responsible.
Love it. Like
those are like, if I just saved half the money I spent on booze, I'd be a millionaire, like.
Yep.
I know it sounds very immature, but like, like that, not having foresight, not having like, I know Alex says this all the time, expand your time horizon. Yeah. And that's something I say to myself consistently on a daily basis, because I don't want to get like, oh, I'm older now, I'm more wise, I'm more whatever. It's like, no, you have to do that. You like, what's it going to be like when you're 50, 60, like, so that's a practice that I've really been trying to do. And also impart on my staff, who are all the age that I was when I started, because I have a very like motivated entrepreneurial staff, and I want to nurture the hell out of that.
That's amazing. That's awesome. Okay. I like it. So attention management and fiscally responsible. I love it. So AKA live well below your means. Yeah. I love it. Okay.
$30,000 of cash that you have under your mattress.
Yeah.
Don't go to the Bahamas.
Don't go to the Bahamas. Don't put it into Dogecoin. Yeah. All right. So the last one is, I always ask this. I'm curious what your answer to this is. If someone is watching this and they've entered the Gym Launch sphere through downloading content, they're sitting here and they've been on a call, or maybe they're interested in joining Gym Launch. What's something you would tell them if they're thinking about joining?
Thinking about it?
Yeah.
Well, I would probably ask, what the fuck are you thinking about? Because there's only two things. Like, you're scared of success or you're scared of failure, in my estimation. Like, and if you're scared of success, which I think is actually more common in the gym space than we give credit to,
100%.
That like, what happens when this thing gets so big? What happens when you have to wrap your hands around all this stuff?
Yep.
But I would also say that the community and the people in front of you will help you every step of the way. They will not do the work, but they will show you how to get the work done.
Yeah.
So to me, I mean, like literally the best decision I have ever made for professional and personal development was
That's
gym
awesome.
launch.
What's the biggest lesson that you've learned from gym launch?
I think it's just the constant pursuit of self-improvement.
Hmm.
I look at people that are, like decades younger than me,
Mhm.
and it inspires me because that's not what I was doing with my time and my attention.
Yep.
And it really motivates me to strive to be the best for my family. I think a lot of it now as a father is making sure that I'm setting the example physically, mentally, emotionally, financially, which things I didn't place emphasis on before. And I see people do that at an earlier age than me, and I think it's absolutely wonderful. So I don't know if that actually answers your question, but that was my.
No, it's great. What's interesting is I think you, myself, other people, especially OGs that have been around gym launch for a while, I have not had. I mean, dude, when I entered the gym launch world, I think I was 28. And like in the 28 years up until there, I got a fraction of the growth that I've had since actually entering the gym launch world as a client first, and now as a general manager and like working with the company. It's incredible. The amount of both personal, professional development is insane. Mindset, the whole works. So that's awesome, dude.
You can have it all, right? Like, honestly, it's amazing what happens when you just dial in your attention.
That's it, man. That's it. I love it. Dude, Michael, thanks for the time, bro. I appreciate it, man. Thanks for sharing your story.
Anytime.
I love it. I love it. All right. For those of you watching, do me a favor. If you got some value from this or found it interesting, go ahead and drop a comment below. Say thank you to Michael. Michael runs $1 million gym. He's obviously extremely busy. And so just say thank you. He likes to show off with all the books behind him because he likes to make you think that he's super smart, which he actually is really smart. But you can see
they're all kids' books, man. They're like pop-up books and shit.
Usually when I talk to you, you're in your gym and you've got your whiteboard behind you. So there's nothing there. So I love it, dude. This is such a good background. Either way, I like to give Mike a hard time. But again, drop a comment, say thank you. We'll be back next week with another client. But Mike, thanks again, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate everything you guys done. So cheers.
Awesome, bro.